Hi everyone, my name's Danny and I'm an educator with a local nonprofit called the Raptor Institute. Now when you hear the word raptor, you might think of the dinosaur, maybe the truck, maybe even the basketball team. But when I say the word raptor, I'm talking about our modern day raptors, and those are going to be things that you think of when you hear the term bird of prey. So those are going to be things like hawks, falcons, eagles, owls, even vultures are considered raptors. Now what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be meeting several different raptors that live here in San Diego, learning a little bit about them, what makes them a raptor, and why they're so important to have here in our communities. Now the birds that you're going to meet are birds that we work with at our organization that have come to us from the wild. So these are wild animals, and they're with us at the Raptor Institute because they were injured in the wild. So all the birds you're going to meet today have some kind of a handicap or permanent disability that prevents them from being able to survive back in the wild on their own. And that's why they're what we call our educational ambassadors. That's why they live in captivity and they're able to come out and do presentations like this and teach the public all about how amazing their species are and why they're so important to have here in San Diego. So if you guys are ready to get started, I'm going to go ahead and bring out our first guest and we'll start learning all about these amazing raptors. All right, everyone, so we're going to switch it up a little bit now and we're going to meet some of San Diego's nighttime raptors. So as you probably have already guessed, this is an owl, and this owl here is the largest owl that lives in San Diego County, and he gets his names from these feathers that are on top of his head. He is called the great horned owl because he's got these little feather tufts that when they're sticking straight up, they look a little bit like horns. Now they're not horns, they're not ears, they're just feathers. He can stick them straight up or lay them straight down depending on how he's feeling. And he's going to use those feathers to help him communicate with other great horned owls and also to help him blend in during the daytime when he's trying to hide and look more like the tree that he might be sitting in. Now one of the first things you might be noticing about this great horned owl is that his eyes are different. And you remember me saying at the beginning that all the birds that we work with here at the Raptor Institute have some form of a handicap. And those handicaps prevent them from being able to survive out in the wild on their own. Now his handicap is obviously he has a bad eye. So his right eye, that's the eye closest to me, is completely blind. He can't see out of that eye. And obviously not being able to see out of one of his eyes would make it incredibly difficult for him to hunt. He'd have no depth perception and being able to try and catch and find his prey. So that's why he stays with us at the Raptor Institute, and that's why he's able to come out and meet groups like yours. Now guys, when we talk about owls, most of our owl species, not all of our owl species, are active primarily only during the nighttime. And that is what we call being nocturnal. I'm sure you've all heard those words before. We have quite a few nocturnal animals here in San Diego, but owls are the only nocturnal type of raptor that we have here in San Diego. And when you're a nocturnal animal, you've got to have some really unique adaptations, some things that are going to help you survive when it's dark outside. Now the first adaptation that all of our owls have is the amazing eyesight that most of us think of when we think of an owl. We think, wow, owls can really see well at night. But not all of us know why they're able to do that. So there's a few reasons why an owl can see much better at night than, say, we can. The first reason has to do with the size of his eyes. Now, believe it or not, his eye is about the exact same size as our eye. But as you can tell, his head is quite a bit smaller than our head. So relative to the size of his head, relative to the size of his brain, he has an incredibly large eye. And that incredibly large eye is like an incredibly large window in your house. It's gonna let in a lot more light than a small window. So in your living room or your kitchen where you've got some nice big windows, during the daytime, that room's gonna be really bright. But maybe in your bathroom or your bedroom where you've only got one small little window, if you go in there during the daytime, you might need to even turn on a light because it's gonna be a lot dimmer because not as much light can get inside. So having that big eye, that big opening, allows him to capture a lot more light at night from things like starlight, moonlight, and ambient light from our cities, our streets, and even our houses. And with those large eyes, capturing much more light than our small eyes, he's able to see over twice as well at night as you and I can see. Now, another reason his eyes work so well at night has to do with the cells that are inside of his eyes. Inside of an eye, we have two main types of cells. We have a cell called a rod, which is going to be sensitive to light, and we have a cell called a cone, which is going to be sensitive to color. Now in our eye, we have about 50% rods and about 50% cones, a pretty even split between those two types of cells. That allows us to see okay when the light gets a little dimmer, say around sunset or sunrise, and also allows us to see all the wonderful colors that we know and appreciate. Now an owl's eye is made up of almost entirely rods. Only about 5% of his eye is made up of those cones. The rest is made up of those light-sensitive rods. And that means that his eye is much more sensitive to the tiniest amount of light from starlight and moonlight, giving him the ability to see much better at night than you and I can. Now the third thing that makes his eyes work really well at night is the reason that if you ever see an owl or even your dog or a coyote at night and you shine a light in its eyes, maybe you're driving home at night with mom and dad and a coyote runs across the road and looks at your headlights, you're gonna notice those eyes shine back at you. They might look red, they might look yellow, they might look green, but they're gonna shine or reflect back at you. And that's because nocturnal animals, like our great horned owl here, have a special reflective coating in the back of their eye. So that means the light that comes into their eye and passes through their retina, where they get their image, is then gonna hit the back of their eye and it's gonna bounce back and come back out of their eye, going across their retina a second time, which doubles the brightness of what they're seeing. Our eye doesn't do that. Don't shine a flashlight in your friend's eyes at night, because that doesn't feel nice. But if you did, you wouldn't see a reflection because the back of our eye is opaque, it absorbs light, it doesn't reflect it back out once the light comes in. And that means he's got double the sensitivity or twice the amount of light going across his eye at night as you and I do. So these are some reasons why great horned owls can see so well at night and why they're able to use their amazing nighttime vision, not just to find their prey, but also to navigate in that nocturnal environment, to be able to navigate through and around the trees when they're flying around and looking for their food. Now, speaking of their food, this great horned owl, as I mentioned, he's the largest owl that we have in San Diego. And therefore, as you can guess, he's probably eating some pretty large animals. So great horned owls, they are very opportunistic. What that means is if he sees an opportunity to eat something, he's gonna go ahead and eat that animal. Now he can eat things as small as mice and rats, also as large as rabbits, jackrabbits. He'll eat other birds. He may even eat reptiles like snakes and lizards. And there's one animal that great horned owls eat that very few, if any other animals in San Diego are willing to eat. It's an animal you guys all know about. Even if you've never seen one before, I guarantee you, every single one of you have smelled one before. You got it? Okay, it's a skunk. Great horned owls are pretty much the only predator in San Diego who's willing to regularly catch and eat skunks. Now you're thinking, why is that? The great horned owls just aren't bothered by the smell of a skunk? Why do you think that might be? Why would a great horned owl be willing to eat such a smelly animal who uses that horrible odor to defend itself from predators? If you're guessing because great horned owls can't smell, you're absolutely right. And that's because when you have really large eyes that take up 70% of the space inside of your head, you had to give up a few things to get those big eyes. One of those things you gave up was your sense of smell. So great horned owls don't have a sense of smell. If he gets sprayed by a skunk, he's not going to notice it. It's not going to bother him. He doesn't even know what it smells like. And therefore, we have great horned owls to thank for making sure there aren't skunks running all over our neighborhoods. If we didn't have great horned owls to catch and to eat skunks, their populations would grow way larger than we would want, and we'd have skunks running everywhere. We'd have a much smellier city to live in without great horned owls to keep it nice and clean and free from those skunks. All right. Now, great horned owls are going to be a really tough raptor to find. And that's because, as we talked about, he's nocturnal. It's going to be really hard for us with our poor eyesight at night to go out and look around and try and find a great horned owl. But there is an easy way to find them, and that's going to be by listening for them. Great horned owls make that really typical owl hooting sound. That's going to be the sound that you think of when you think of what an owl should sound like. I'm going to try and do an impression for you. It's not going to be perfect. You can find much better impressions online on YouTube, but this is roughly what a great horned owl sounds like. Okay, it's going to be a bit deeper than the sound that I'm making, but it's that real repetitive, real deep hooting sound. You might hear 2 or 3 or 4 of them. And if you hear that sound at night, maybe on a warm evening when you've got your windows open and you're laying in bed getting ready to go to sleep, and you hear a nice deep hooting sound, you think, gosh, that sounds like an owl. Well, guess what? It is an owl, and it's going to be a great horned owl. Now, you've probably been hearing that he's making a sound right now that isn't a hooting sound. And you're thinking, well, Mr. Dan, you just said great horned owls hoot, but he's making a sound that doesn't sound anything like a hoot. Well, guess what, guys? Hooting isn't the only sound that owls make. Most owl species make quite a variety of different sounds. The sound he's making is what we kind of call a barking sound. And it's a sound you'll hear owls make a lot when they're in their family group, when they're communicating with their parents or their mates, when they're talking to each other. So if you hear that sound, because now you've heard it live and in person, you'll know that that sound is also a great horned owl. But the easy sound to listen for is that nice classic owl hooting sound that most great horned owls make. All right, guys, so that's a little bit about our great horned owl. Before I go ahead and put him back and bring out our last guest, I want to talk about a few questions that we'll normally get during these presentations, of course, when we do them in front of a live audience. Now, one of our most common questions, unfortunately, people ask us, is do we have to worry about these big predators living in our backyards, these hawks, these great horned owls? Could they eat our little cat or our little dog, our favorite pet, out in our backyard, especially with an owl at night? Now, my answer to everyone who asks that question is almost certainly no. Is it impossible? Of course not. There are strange things that happen every day, but it's very, very uncommon for a raptor like this to ever attack one of your favorite pets at home. Now, there's 2 reasons for that. One is, even your smallest dog or your smallest cat is still probably going to outweigh these raptors by 2 to 3 times. This great horned owl, our biggest owl in San Diego, only weighs slightly over 2 pounds. So your little Chihuahua at home who might weigh 5 or 6 pounds is going to weigh quite a bit more than this great horned owl. And even if he could catch that little animal, he's not going to be able to carry it away. A raptor can only carry about half of its body weight. So the biggest thing a great horned owl or a red-tailed hawk could carry up into a tree or out of your yard would be something about the size of a small rabbit. Otherwise, they'd have to eat that animal where they caught it on the ground. So I will say, don't let your pets be out at night because there are a lot of other nighttime predators, coyotes, bobcats, even raccoons that could cause harm to your pets, that even though you think you live in the city, you might not have these animals. These animals are in and amongst our urban habitats. They could be in your backyard. So the safest place for your animals, especially at night, is somewhere secure where they don't have to worry about any kind of nighttime predator. Now, another question we get a lot with our raptors is that a boy or is that a girl? Now, if you remember a few birds back, I talked about the fact that most raptors, it's impossible for us to tell the difference by looking at them. And this great horned owl is no exception. If I had a female great horned owl standing here on my other hand, they would look identical. But if you guys remember, there was one difference, and that's going to be a size difference. Now, some raptor species, that size is substantial. And it'd be very easy to tell, okay, that's the male, because he's quite a bit smaller, and that's the female, because she's much larger. But some raptor species, like great horned owls, that size difference is there, but it's not necessarily noticeable by looking at them. Now, we have a good idea because we weigh our birds, and just like with humans, there's a size range where most male great horned owls are in this weight range, and most females are in this weight range, and there is some overlap, but we feel pretty confident in saying that this great horned owl here is a male, based on his weight, which we take on a regular basis to make sure he's healthy and he's eating enough food when he's back at home in his enclosure. Now, another question we get is, do you name these birds? Because all I've been telling you is that this is a great horned owl, that our previous birds were, say, an American kestrel. And honestly, guys, that's what I want you to remember from my presentation. I want you to first and foremost remember what this bird is. So when you go out and see them in your backyard, or you go on a field trip to Daly Ranch, or go out to a park, I want you to remember what kind of bird that is. But we obviously give our birds names, and that's going to help us differentiate between the different birds that we house and care for. And this great horned owl, his name is Who. Now, the reason we name him Who is because, as you learned a few minutes ago, he makes that real classic hooting sound. So that'll help you remember Who, the great horned owl, makes the sound of a hoot. All right? Now, one more question we get, and that is, how old are your birds? How old is this great horned owl here? Now, in the wild, if you see a great horned owl that looks like this, there's no way to tell if it's 1 year old, 3 years old, or 10 years old. And that's because once a bird loses its juvenile feathers, that means its first feathers that it grows in its first year of life, those feathers are unique, and we can tell, hey, that great horned owl is young, he's in his first year of life, he's what we call a juvenile. But every year raptors are going to lose their feathers, a few at a time, and they're going to grow new ones. And after that first, what we call molt, which is the process of losing those feathers and growing new ones, after that first molt, a great horned owl, whether it's 2 years old, or 5 years old, or 10 years old, is going to look the same. Now, how old do you guys think this great horned owl is? Take a guess. And I actually know, and the only reason I know is because we've had him since he was in his first year of life. Okay, some of our other birds we got when they were already adults, and I can't tell you how old they are. But with him I can, and I can tell you that this great horned owl here is 8 years old. Now, in the wild you might be thinking, well, how long do great horned owls live? Is an 8-year-old great horned owl young? Is he really old? What's their lifespan? Well, believe it or not, an average lifespan for a bird like this, a large raptor like our great horned owl, is going to be about 3 to 5 years. So that's a pretty low average. Now, you all know how we come up with averages, and that's by taking all the great horned owls that are born and averaging out the ages of every different one and how long they survive. Now, with raptors, they've got a really high mortality rate in their first year of life. So believe it or not, only 2 out of every 10 raptors, great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, American kestrels, are going to make it to their first birthday. That means about 80% will die before they're 1 year old. And that's why their average is a little bit low. Now, once a bird like this great horned owl makes it to his first birthday, he proves himself a successful hunter, he finds a habitat to live in with enough food to sustain him and a family, then it's common and it's possible that a great horned owl like this would live between 10 to 20 years. So at 8 years old with us, he's kind of middle-aged. He's right around the middle of his life. Now, in captivity, his life's a lot less stressful. He gets fed for the duration of his life, even when he's too old to catch food on his own. So he could potentially live 20 to 30 years with us in captivity, which is going to be a bit longer than we would expect a great horned owl to live in the wild. Now, as far as those lifespans go, the larger the raptor, the longer the life. The smaller the raptor, the shorter the life. So he's our largest owl. He's going to have the longest lifespan of any of our other owl species in San Diego County. We've got larger daytime raptors, like golden eagles and bald eagles, which have been known to live 40 to even 50 years in the wild. And then we've got smaller raptors like that American kestrel that you met at the beginning, that might only live 5 to 7 years in the wild. So a bit shorter lifespan for the smaller raptors and a longer lifespan for the larger raptors. All right, guys, so that's it for our great horned owl. But I want to go ahead and get him back in his box because I've got one more raptor that I want to share with you before we're all finished. So thanks again for listening, and give me just a minute and I'll be back with our last guest.